Welcome everybody to Changing of the Hip Hop Guards podcast. I'm the journalist Sincere. That's my partner Uncle E. And this evening we have the pleasure of speaking with Lyricist Lounge co-founder Danny Castro. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
No doubt, no doubt. Peace,
Sure.
guys.
Peace,
No
peace.
doubt. We want
Thanks
to
for
take
having
it,
me.
no doubt. We want to take it back all the way to the beginning and then all the way up into 2023 to see what you got going on this year and going into next year. But for those who may not know, can you take us back to where you were born and raised?
Oh yeah. Uh, well, basically, born and raised New York City, Lower East Side. Um, Always had family in Brooklyn, East New York, Bushwick. Um, and yeah, man, just a straight up New Yorican, New York head. You know what I'm saying?
No
And,
doubt. The life of Danny Castro, teenage years.
oh yeah, teenage years. Those were good years, man. I went to school in humanities. I went to humanities high school. Then I went to an alternative high school called Urban Academy. So, like, I met a lot of folks going to humanities because, like, in the nightlife, I started going out like real early. Like I was like 15 years old going out to nightclubs. My first nightclub was actually Studio 54. I remember that shit clearly. Like I was mad young, like 15 years old, going to Studio 54. Like my mind was blown. I was like, it was crazy. It was like, that was towards the end of their, like they started getting into their issues and they were about to close down. So they were probably like, you know what, we're gonna just do whatever the fuck we want. You know what I mean? And that's basically what happened with that. So like I went out, like my first night was, I think it was like they were calling it teen night, and this was like way back, like I think it was probably 89 or some shit. And New York City was different back then. It's definitely not the same. Like they were just, I remember getting like a fake ID from 42nd Street,
Yeah.
and like I just went to the door and they didn't even care. They just looked at it. They looked at me. They were like, all right, go ahead. So it's like me being a 15-year-old, being in a nightclub. It was amazing. The sound system in that club was just incredible, super loud. I never heard anything like that in my life. And then you seen like everybody, like every single hood was up in there. You had heads from the Bronx, you had heads from Brooklyn, heads from Lower East Side, Queens, and Little Louis Vega was DJing. I mean, Louis Vega. He used to be called Little Louis Vega back then. And I remember seeing the Jungle Brothers perform, and I was just blown away. I was like, wow, this is incredible. So yeah, that was my first experience at a nightclub. And the my teenage years were really, really like special because, again, New York City was so live. Like you entering like the 90s. And to me, the 90s was like one of the best eras. I don't want to sound like a old man, whatever, you know what I'm saying? But that's what it was. Like if you were able to experience New York City in the 90s, you understand where I'm coming from. Like it was just special, like that was like a whole new it was like a new beginning of the golden era. Everyone just was into like, the arts of hip hop, like whether you were a dancer, whether you were MC or like into your DJing, producing, but everybody wanted to be original, and that was also like around the same time you had like house music that was becoming really big in the whole nightlife scene. And it was already starting to be big, like probably like the late 80s. And of course, like if you want to go back further to like Paradise Garage times, that's kind of like when it started like bubbling, and I didn't find out till later on in life. But that was another thing too. So you had hip hop, you had house music, and people were just in love with the culture and with music. And it was just super live. People were still able to like drink 40s and smoke blunts in the park. People hanging out in the village, Washington Square Park,
Yeah.
having ciphers. You have the skaters over there doing their skating. You have people kicking rhymes over here. People smoking blunts over there. So it was a whole. It was just crazy. Yeah. So I feel blessed to be like, um, like around during that time in New York City because being at that's when like New York City itself, it was just so rich, like with culture. Like you had everybody, you had different, it was multicultural, and everybody was chilling with each other. There was no kind of racial tension, like religious tension, nothing. Everybody was just super cool. We didn't even care about none of that shit. Like if I had boys that were, friends that were Jewish, Muslim, Catholic, whatever, like I had all types of people, and it was just all for the mutual love of hip hop culture, you
Dope,
know.
dope, dope. Yeah, so around that time, what were you into anything in particular? Meaning, like, were you into graph, dancing? Did you have one particular thing, or a variety of different elements that you were into?
Yeah, like during the time I was into dancing, like I was dancing back in the days, like an inspired dancer, because when I was growing up as a teenager, of course, like watching Beat Street and like seeing like Rocksteady and New York City Breakers, and of course like I used to look up to those guys. They were like my idol. So I remember like when I was super young, like 13, like practicing breakdancing, like in the lobby of my building with like cardboard, on the floor and shit, trying to get into it. And then like hip hop freestyle dancing started, becoming more and more popular, like just, combining different styles, like so that's what I was into. And like big shout to all the cast that inspired me. Like of course you had the Mop Tops. Those were like they
Mhm.
still like the dance gods, and in my circle. So you had those cats. You had like all the dance crews. Like ICU, IBM, all of these crews. You had like, and then you had Jiggy, who like I became a part of like later on. Those cats embraced me because like that's when I met, my partner Aunt Marshall. He was going to school with one of the cats that were down with Jiggy, and
Okay.
they were like really tight. They were actually like they are like um birthday twins. So, that was like his right hand in high school, and then me and him became like brothers, and then we just started rolling, and then that's where I met Prance Lowe, um, you know, Kazo, all of them, Theo, Tonga. Big shout to the whole
Right,
Jiggy
right,
crew,
right.
Little Rome.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's when they were, like the whole thing with them, they didn't just get busy on the dance floor, but they would fly too. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
So like that's when, and when I was young, when I was like a teenager, I was already getting fly. Like, I had friends that were working at like Nautica and Tommy Hill, and like there was always boxes being dropped off somewhere, you know what I mean? So like we always got hooked up,
Yeah.
and So, like, of course, the real recognize real. And that's when I started chilling with them. And then, of course, the whole low life crew, shout out to them too, you know?
So is
Yeah.
and is he related to Prince, or are they just cool? And are they actually related?
Well, like they Trini cousins, you know how that is, you
Okay,
know?
okay, okay, okay. I wasn't
Yeah,
too sure if
yeah,
they were actually, blood related,
yeah,
but that's
yeah, yeah.
that's dope.
You
So,
know what it is.
at what point, do you and then get together? You know what I'm saying, and start to discuss as far as trying to come up with something like before Lyricist Lounge even was thought
Yeah.
of. At what
So
point did you guys do
basically,
that?
like the way it all happened was, being that I was, we had a mutual love for dancing, and everybody was into dancing back then. Everybody wanted to be a dancer, just how everybody wants to be an MC or whatever now, right?
Right.
So, like, we met up. We actually met at Roseland, and we were like both 15 years old. Then, like I said, he was going to Julia Richmond. I was going to Humanities Urban Academy. And while I was going to Urban Academy, they had like this internship program where, like, they will hook you up with different internships wherever you want to go. So my good friend that I was going to high school with, his dad had a nonprofit organization called SBI, Sound Business Institute, where he would teach high school students how entrepreneurship. So
Okay.
he would teach them about business and how to start your business and everything like that. So I chose to like do an internship with his organization. And through his organization, he saw that we had a lot of friends that were into rhyming, and he actually had like a studio apartment where they would use as rehearsal space for musicians. And he hooked it up. He got us to do open mics over at the space that he had, and it was actually at 45 Orchard Street in the Lower East Side.
Okay.
And that's where it all started, because at first he would tell us to invite our friends to come over to like his place, because he had like a big office with a deck outside. And he's like, hey, just invite some of your friends over, like, because our whole idea was to start like a promotional company.
Mhm.
And that was and do parties. So like we wanted to start a promotional company where we could do events and parties, and just work with different artists. So that's how the whole idea started. And then once we started doing the open mics, we invited our friends to come over, and it was the natural evolution of dancers wanting to become MCs,
Mhm.
just like what I mentioned, the Mop Tops, like Peter Paul, big shout to him. He came out with, some music back in the days. Mop Tops was doing their music. Jiggy, they had their album that came out.
Right.
So we would invite them to come to the open mics, and the energy was just, incredible. And they were, everybody was loving it so much. Even after the session, people would go out and just continue the vibe, continue the ciphers outside. You know what I mean? So like we knew that we had something, so we was just trying to figure out what we were gonna call it. And I was just like, yo, we should just call it Lyricist Lounge. And then it just popped off from there.
Mm. Real quick, so you said it was supposed to. Well, you started out the concept of being throwing parties, which I guess was kind of going more into like promoters and that type of thing,
Right. Yeah.
and working with artists. So was the open mic something that you guys just didn't necessarily think about doing? It just kind of happened, and then it just kept evolving.
Well, it was something that it was mainly like an experiment,
Okay.
because like our mentor, his name is Charles Thompson. he had connects with different industry folks. So the whole idea was just to like, let's just see what happens. You know what I mean? He was like, hey, look, I got this space. I'm not using it. You guys are welcome to use it. It has 4 microphones. It had like a busted drum kit, and it was like in a studio apartment. And at first, we just had like a cassette player, with speakers.
Okay.
So we would like have people bring either their demos or bring instrumentals on cassettes. And then eventually we invited a friend of ours, this cat. He used to go by DJ Megahertz back in the days, and now he goes by DJ Straight Heat. He's from Flatbush. Big shout to
Okay.
Flatbush. Um, and Yeah, so that's how it happened. And then like, so he was just like, hey, look, invite some of your friends to come over, and then maybe like once a month I'll invite some industry folks to check them out, and you never know, let's see what we can make happen.
Gotcha.
And that's how it all started.
You mentioned some industry folks. Who were some of the up and coming artists as well as established artists that came through early on?
Well, early on, we had like this cat Jamal Ski. I don't know if has remember Jamal
Yeah,
Ski.
Yeah.
You
Beat.
know,
Beat Down Productions, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Hell yeah.
Jamal Ski. Um, we had Dougie Fresh come through. We also had an educated rapper come through, and and a few others. And the crazy thing is, these cats were coming because, you know, their dancers were up and coming, MCs. So their dancers will invite them to come. They like, yo, come to the open mic, man. It's fun.
Okay.
Like, come and chill. So we had like all these different cats come through, and then of course like folks in the early, like the Bush Babies before they got signed, they would come in. Like of course Aguilar, Adolf the Assassin, um, you know, as I mentioned, Jiggy, Mob Tops, and then eventually, we moved to like this club called the Muse because we outgrown like this space that we had, the studio apartment, and we moved to this space called the Muse. And that's when we started like promoting, doing street promotion, like posting 8.5 by 11 flyers on like lamp poles and like on walls, wherever, going to the Coliseum, going to the Lower East Side, wherever, going to the Village, Uptown. And it actually worked. And that was the form of promotion back then. There was no internet. We didn't even have like smartphones, or I don't even think we had cell phones like yet. You know what I mean? Like
Nah,
we
maybe
had
beepers,
the
maybe.
big cell phones. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
or the Nokia flip joints. But other than that, yeah, like it was only like pagers back then, actually.
Right.
So yeah, so that's how we was doing it, and it was like word of mouth. Like I remember I was still living with my mom. We used to post my number on the flyers and shit, so like everybody had my mom's number and shit. So like, yeah, it was real.
Oh, take us back to a 14-year-old Foxy Brown at the Muse.
Yeah, so to continue that, when we went to the Muse and we started like, we had this whole plan that we wanted to not only do an open mic, but like we knew that this open mic was gonna draw a lot of inspiring MCs, rappers, artists. So we wanted to form a membership. So we was actually gonna charge people like $25 a month for a membership, and they could come to the open mics for free. So we were like thinking ahead and trying to like make something different happen. And I mean, it never really transpired, but we still continued to open mics, and it was like only like probably $5, ladies free. So we had this young lady, young girl with her whole crew. She had a whole female crew come through too, and And like she got on a mic, 14 years old, and she was like spitting, she was kicking, she was doing her thing, she was getting busy. And it happened to be Foxy Brown, like she was like, yeah, my name is Inga, from Brooklyn, blah blah blah, 14 years old. So we was like, oh shit, that's wild, you know. And we actually got footage of that too, which is gonna
Word.
be a documentary. Yeah, I'm sure people saw it because we posted it online and all of that. So mad people seen the shit already.
That's great. Wait, so between that time, seeing her at 14, after that, when's the next time you realize that Foxy Brown is turns into the Foxy Brown that everybody else knows?
After that is crazy because after she got on the open mic, we haven't seen her in years, and it was so ill. Like right after that, like the next time I saw her was on Video Music Box, like doing, ain't no nigga with Jay-Z. And I was like, oh shit, look,
Yeah, that's crazy.
that's that shorty that was at our open mic. That's
Yeah,
crazy, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And then the crazy part too is that, like years later, I ended up moving to Brooklyn, like Prospect Heights.
Mhm.
She ends up like living a block away from me,
Oh,
which
shit.
was so ill, you know?
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
At what point do you guys outgrow the Muse and work your way towards Village Gate?
So we went to the Muse at 1992 and we stayed for like about a year. And it was just time for us to move on because, the Muse was having their own issues business wise. So, we were in search for a new space, and then we got the Village Gate in 1993. So the next year we moved to the Village Gate. And that was an interesting story because like we still were like about, I think I was probably 18 or 17 or 18 at that time. And we over here like booking venues that we like still too young to even be in, you know what I mean? So like, we had to like be strategic and smart how we would go about it. So we actually brought one of our friends who was white and he was like a drummer, and we told the guy that he was our lawyer. So we were like, hey, yeah, we brought our lawyer with us, and then it was so funny because the owner of like the Village Gate, he was like this older guy. He was probably at least like in his late 60s or 70s, and you could tell he was an OG that like because the Village Gate was like a legendary jazz club, so
Mhm.
he seen all the jazz greats and everything, and we were like honored to even be in there and like even get an opportunity to do something there. So like we talking to him and everything, and then at the end of the meeting, he was like, "Hey guys, by the way, don't say that that's your lawyer. I know that's not your lawyer." It was funny, but yeah.
No.
But then we go to the Village Gate, and we ended up doing. That's when we transitioned from being an just not only an open mic but a showcase as well.
Okay.
So like what we wanted to do, we wanted to try to figure out a way to not just get a bunch of, MCs to come to the event. We wanted like consumers and a regular audience to come check out the performances. So then that's when we started screening uh, the artists that were going to perform.
Mm.
So, like the first show we had Mob Deep when they were like super young, like they like even before they came out with because they came out with their first album that didn't do that well, and this is when they signed to Loud. They were just about to sign to Loud Records. I think it was even before they signed to Loud Records. So yeah, so they were like the same age as us. They were like 17, probably even younger. Like yeah, 17 years old or something like that. And um, yeah, and that's when we had the Cellar Dwellers as well,
Okay.
and a few other cats. Yeah,
Okay.
that was a good night, and we had Dougie Fresh as a host. So that was the whole hook. Like we were like, all right, how are we gonna get folks to come to check out like new artists? So we were like, all right, well, it'll be a good idea that we get a celebrity host, somebody that people know, a veteran or like a legend in the game.
Right.
So Dougie Fresh was um, cool enough to be our first host, and that was dope. And then the following event, we were able to do the launch party for Bad Boy Entertainment
Oh
because we
wow.
were like we were we became really cool with the guy that was Diddy's right hand man at the time, Kirk Burrows,
Mm.
and Kirk was the one that like made it all happen. So like we ended up having Diddy and Biggie Smalls host the show. So that's when it took us to the whole other level from there. Because
Okay.
then people were recognizing the name, recognizing the brand, seeing what we were doing, and there was a lot of people at that event. Like all the industry heads up in there.
Yeah, so you kind of answered a couple of the questions that I had for you, but
Yeah.
I want to know. So you mentioned like finding like Mob Deep, Cellar Dwellers, all these people early on. How
hmm
were you guys finding them? Like, how would someone like, for example, a Mob Deep before they really got on even come across your radar at
Yeah.
that
Well.
time?
Yeah. At that time, you know, uh, I mean, we were like so ahead of our time. It's crazy when I think back about it because, like, even when it came to business, like I got to give a big shout to my partner again, Aunt Marshall. Like, um, because we were like really like zoned out into like really making it a business at an early age, and to a point where like our first office was the same building where Russell Simmons had his first office,
Hmm.
in Broadway.
Okay.
And so, like, again, what we were doing was we were handing out flyers, and we would on the flyer or have our number, and people will call us, and they'll reach out and they'll come. We'll set up meetings with them. They'll come to the office. They'll play us demos, and at that point, for an example, Mob Deep, their manager at the time was this young lady. I forgot her name, but she came to our office and she was like, "Oh yeah, I got this new group. You might have heard about them before, but I don't like. I'm about to get them signed to another label. They call Mob Deep. They from Queens. These young cats, And we were like, "Oh yeah, no doubt. Let's do it." Because they at that time, I believe they were getting a little buzz as well. Because you know at that time, of course, we had WKCR, the Stretch and Bobito show, where all the underground artists were going to, and of course WNYU, and
Hmm.
all the cast. Homeboy from Long Island, what's his name?
T
Oh my
Money.
God. Yeah, there was a few dope underground radio shows that would play certain artists, and of course, like the number one show at that time was Stretch and
Stretch
Bobito.
and
So
Bob.
like,
Yeah.
I think they were the first to play Mobb Deep, and I think that's where we heard the name, and then we were like, oh yeah, definitely, we got to get them on.
Right, right, right. Now, talking about Stretch and Bob, you guys were kind of running around the same time.
hmm
What was the relationship like between you guys and
Yeah,
Stretch and Bob?
well, like yeah, it was super cool, man. Like, cause of course, again, Stretch and Bob, everybody was listening to them, like, as far as all the underground hip hop heads. And of course, we were like fans of them already. And I remember like getting up. It was like real early. I think it was like around 93 or 94. You know, Bobito, I met up with Bobito. We just got up and, we was just building. He was showing love. And, of course, I was giving him mad props for what they were doing. So there was definitely a great level of respect for each other, like, and to a point that he actually hosted a couple of our shows.
Nice.
That's when, like, after the Village Gate, we ended up doing shows at the Supper Club, this spot
Okay.
on like 49th Street or something like that, or around it, 47th Street. And it was a really dope space. And we ended up getting that space, and we had Bobito hosted. We got That's when we started making a building a business relationship with Echo Unlimited Clothing,
Hmm.
and we were like doing sales rep for Echo Unlimited when he first came out.
Okay.
And yeah, so those were like really dope um times too, because when Bobito hosts the show, he of course he invited like Cool Keith to come and co-host with him.
Nice.
So that was really super crazy. And we had, again, that's when we had Smith and Wesson, and we had MOP perform. And
So,
like back then, like our name started really buzzing in the streets. Like everyone wanted to perform at a Lyricist Lounge. Like, because we were like the one of the, I think maybe the only platform for these new artists to get exposure. You know,
right.
like, as y'all know, of course, there was no Instagram, no Facebook, no, not even MySpace. So like we were that.
Hmm.
That's what we were for people. So um we actually, like, I remember, like, big shout to Lays from MOP. Like, he ended up like hitting us up. He was like, "Hey, I want to take y'all to dinner," like, and kind of like selling us to like have his new group MOP perform at a Lyricist Lounge. And I was just like, "Yo, this is crazy." You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and so yeah, man, it was good
That's
times, man.
that's dope. So the other thing that I was going to ask, which you answered, was about when you guys felt that things really started to kick off. You mentioned the Diddy, and the Bad Boy
Mhm.
Party. Um, how did you guys end up getting, for example, like an artist like Eminem?
Oh yeah, so Eminem, like, we'll fast forward, like we've done a lot, like between 94 and,
So like
like, we met
97.
Eminem like around 97, around that time, because during that time we were recording our first album,
Hmm.
Lyricist Lounge Volume 1. So we did a deal with Raucous Records, and we were actually recording the album. And like I invited a bunch of artists to come to Firehouse Studios so we could record like the rhyme sketches that we were calling the cipher
Hmm.
sketches. So like if you listen to the album, there's like different cipher sketches in between songs. And so there was like about 20 MCs in Firehouse in the lobby waiting to get on a track. And a few of them, like Thurston and Wordsworth and AL, they just came back from the Rap Olympics in LA, where Wendy Day from
Hmm.
Rap Coalition, she put that together back in the days, and
Right.
she had like all these different MCs from different parts of this, the states, come through. A few of them were like Juice, and of course, like, Eminem, and Thurston, and all these cats that were super ill with like the freestyle.
Okay.
So they all were like in this freestyle competition and MC competition. So when they came back from that and they were at the studio, all of them were talking about this one white boy that was super nice. And they were like, "Yo, y'all remember the cat Eminem? He was fucking crazy. And then like one of them, I'm not sure who it was, but it was either I think it was AL or Wordsworth. They had a cassette of his and they started playing it, and I was like, oh shit, this kid is nice. He was just like on a whole other level. That's when he came out with that Slim Shady like cassette.
Okay.
And so long story short, like I got in contact with his manager at the time, which Paul Rosenberg. Everybody knows who that is,
Hmm.
right? And he ends up coming to our office, which was at the New Yorker Hotel on 34th Street at the time. And he came through and he brought some vinyl, he brought a cassette. He was like, and it was so crazy because we were in the middle of recording the first album, and he was like, hey, you think it's possible we could get on this album? Like, he was like asking us if he could get on the album, and I wanted to do it, of course. Like, we all wanted to do it, but like when we like presented it to the cast at Raucus, they were like, well, he already put that out independently, and we'll have to use one of the songs that he put out, like the cassette. But I was like, yo, it's worth it. Like, you know what I mean? It's
Right,
not
right.
like anybody knows yet. He was creating a buzz, but it wasn't like it was like that yet. So we didn't get to put him on an album, and of course, like Ruckus ends up putting them on their Sound Bombing album, which was fucking so corny and whack. Because they totally like found him from us,
Yeah, yeah.
like. And of course, I'm sure like Paul Rosenberg met up with them and all of that too, um because he was just on his grind and meeting up with everybody at the time.
Mm.
And but we were the first to put Eminem on the stage in New York,
Right.
like. And that's where like everybody like really got to know who he was, and that's when he was rolling with the Outsiders too,
Right.
and we were cool with the Outsiders as well.
Got
Where
you, got you, got. So that just so people know, as far as Eminem, that's like at what point? Because you said he was creating the buzz,
mm-hmm.
right? So
Yup.
that's already Dre's already involved, not involved
Nah, Dre was not
before
involved.
that, right?
Dre didn't even know who he was yet. Like, none of these people knew who
Right, right.
Eminem was. Like, we got to find out because we were connected to these MCs that were actually at the Rap Olympics.
Right.
So that's why I got to give a shout to Wendy Day. Shout to all the cats. Like I said, Words, AL, Thirst, Thurston, um, and Punch, all these cats. You know what I mean? Because they always, not only they were like super lyrical and nice, they always kept their ear to the streets too. They were always, and till this day, they like that. They like,
Yeah,
yo.
yeah, yeah.
So they were like, you could say kind of like our A&Rs in a way, but we were doing the same thing, but we made sure that whenever we heard somebody that was super dope, we put them on, you know.
Nice.
And
Okay.
even like Jimmy Iovine, because after that, then we actually did our first national tour, and the national tour was to promote our first album, and we actually put Eminem on our tour, and that was in 1998, our first national tour. And a lot of people still didn't know who Eminem was, but he just got his deal with with Dre and
Right.
Jimmy Iovine, right?
Yeah.
And but even before that, like, Jimmy Iovine had his story that he found out about Eminem through like some A&R that was working there, and they saw Eminem at a Lyricist Lounge show, and they were like, "Hey, you gotta check this guy out. Like, he's really good." And I saw him at a Lyricist Lounge show, and he's really dope. And there's actually like we got to find that footage. There's some video of Jimmy Iovine talking about that too.
Oh shit.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nice.
how instrumental was Matty C with the Lyricist Lounge?
Oh yeah. Big shout to Matty C, man. That's the homie. Like, he actually, him and Reef, um, they the ones that actually gave us our first article at the Source magazine. So gotta give a big shout to them. Like, and Matty C used to always come to Lyricist Lounge shows, and him and Scott Free, shout out to Scott Free, they the ones that signed Cellar Dwellers to Loud Records. And
Mhm.
at the time, we were managing the Cellar Dwellers. So, like, we always had a good relationship with those dudes.
Right. You talked a little bit about Mark Echo. He did your logo earlier on.
Well, Mark Echo, he never did our logo, but he used to come. And actually, Maddie was the plug that connected us to Mark Echo, because we used to go hang out with Maddie at the office in the Source magazine, and like we saw like this dope ass artwork on his wall, and we were like, "Yo, who's that? This dude is fucking dope." And he was like, "Oh yeah, that's this cat Echo. He's super dope. We got him doing certain things for us for the magazine." And then, like Ant was like, "Yo, you could connect us with him," and we connected. He happened to be a fan of what we were doing, and we ended up doing the underground airplay tapes, the mixtapes that were connected to Echo's clothing. So whenever he sold a T-shirt, he would give away a tape for free, and that was like his promotional, product. And we reproduced the first few underground airplay tapes that came out,
Right.
and that's how we
Nice.
evolved to do the compilation album, Lyricist Lounge Volume 1.
Right. What was that experience like putting together that compilation?
Oh, that was yeah, man. That was so dope, man, because we got to work with a lot of folks that we looked up to, like De La Soul, Q-Tip, you know, um, OC, Raz Kaz, doing the cipher with like Common, Pharaoh Monch, and Black Thought. Like, that was just nuts. And we also pay homage to Stretch and Bobito. Like, we wanted to make sure we had them on there, and that's why and the way we did it was just really creative. Like, we wanted to like create the feel of an actual Lyricist Lounge show, so that's why we did it that way. Like, if you notice, the first, it was like a double album. So like the first CD, we had De La Soul hosted, and they were like hosting at Tramps, and we actually had them host at Tramps, so it was pretty dope. And
Nice.
then the next one, we had Kool Keith and Sir Menelik, and it was at Shea Stadium. So like we were like really on some visionary shit. You know what I mean? And we just made it sound like we were actually at Shea Stadium, like doing the show. You know what I mean? So it was really dope how we put that together.
How did you guys go about devising a plan to put a tour together?
Well, like while we were like super innovative, man. Like, at that time, it was just like a spiral momentum, you know, effect that we just kept evolving and kept moving, like, so while we were doing these shows, and like during that time we were also doing parties in New York City. So like we were doing shows and parties at the same time, and we also were, the vision was to like branch out and take the brand nationally. So we were actually planning on doing these tours even before we got our deal with Raucus. So everything just fell into place like organically. And we were lucky enough to get sponsorship from this company called Exto. Like they don't even exist anymore, and a couple of other like record labels um, that they got on board as well. And so we had for our first tour, it was crazy because like we were just learning on the fly. Like we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. Like we were like booking flights instead of getting like a tour bus, you know what I mean? Like so we learned a lot on that first tour, but it was still really dope because the way we set it up, we had like different artists in different cities, and certain artists would go on the road with us for like De La Soul. They did a lot of dates with us. They would host and they would perform. So we had like in the West Coast, we had De La Soul like in the Bay Area, in Phoenix, and in LA, and then we would have a co-headliner in each show. So like in the Bay Area, we had the Black Eyed Peas, and this was like before they blew up and
Right,
became
right.
Black Eyed Peas, like, um, but they still, again, they already had their buzz, like going. Um, and like in LA, we had Slick Rick when he first came out, came home. When remember
Okay.
he was locked up for a while with the INS
Right, right,
because
right.
got into that issue, and then he came home and we brought out Slick Rick. So that was crazy. And throughout all these um, dates, we had Eminem as an opener. So like, Eminem was one of our openers, and like Infamous Syndicate, which was Shauna, and I forgot her partner. So like Shauna that rose with Ludacris, that used to roll with Ludacris,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
she
yeah, yeah.
was on the dates as well.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, and then we would have different people like KRS-One, Common, Dead Prez. There was a lot of people on that tour. It was crazy, and we did our launch party for the tour over at the tunnel. And that was a legendary night because we had not only we had Eminem, but we had 50 Cent before he even blew up. So it was like Eminem and 50 Cent, they didn't even know each other,
Yeah, that's crazy.
like, and they were in the same show. Like, so that was crazy. If anybody has footage of that show, please reach out to us. That
Damn, you guys don't have footage of that, man.
that was like one of the only shows that we don't have footage of, and that
Wow.
shit was a legendary show. We had I think it was the Roots. The Roots were the backup band. We had like Slick Rick perform. I think Kid Capri was the host, or I forgot, like Kid Capri or Common. I know Common performed. Large Professor performed out of nowhere, like he wasn't even on the bill. It was just a crazy, crazy night, yo. It was
That's
wild.
wish we was there. At,
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
at what point does MTV come knocking on your door?
Well, like we actually knocked on their door. So like the way all of that came about was through that same cipher session that I was telling you guys about, that we had 20 MCs uh, at Firehouse Studios. So while they were waiting to get on the mic and get in the booth, everybody was chilling in the lobby, and they were doing what MCs do. They started a cipher, and they played some beats, and a cipher started. And when the cipher started, uh, Wordsworth, he just like started doing improv. improvisation, and he was like rhyming like he was a teacher. So he just started kicking freestyle like rhyming. He was a teacher, and then everybody started like just adding on, and then like Thurston, he raised his hand. He was like, teacher, teacher, blah blah blah, and then like they started interacting with each other, and we caught it on video, and that's where the whole idea for the show sparked off. So we were like, yo, this would be a great idea for a TV show. We should like see what we could do. And so, we connected with some folks that already had uh, a deal with an agency. So the agency set up a bunch of meetings, and all these different networks, they didn't get it. And they didn't get it, or we just didn't go through the right person, or whatever it was, because there's a lot of politics in television, and we learned that the hard way. But we were able to sit down with the director of programming over at MTV during that time, and he was like really into it. We showed him the tape. He was like, oh, this is cool, this is great. So like once he was like hooked, then he invited us to do a presentation for all the executives in MTV in LA. So we had to like come up with different sketches that we were going to present to them. So that's when we got Words and Power and Master Fool. We were working with them at the time already. So we were like, hey, look, let's put this together. And we did it. And then that's how we ended up getting a pilot, and then we got a show.
Crazy, crazy. Oh, you just mentioned Power, which I want to ask you. You talking about Power Malu?
Yeah, yes.
Right. Can you what's up with Power Malu, man? If you don't, I don't know, Sincere, you know who that is by any chance?
Of course.
Right.
DJs
Yeah.
for Master Ace sometimes.
Yeah.
That guy was like in every single video that you would see around that time with the big hit. I think I remember him also from a lot. He was always in a lot of like with Curious and
Yeah.
the whole CM crew and all of that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
well,
How
they
do you
used
guys?
people used to mix up Power with Lord Sear, because Lord Sear had the big afro
He had the
too.
big afro too. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
but Power,
back
I'm talking about.
Yeah, but everybody, yeah. Power, yeah. Power
Yeah.
was in all the videos. He was in
Yeah.
all
How
the
did you
videos.
guys even link up to begin with?
Well, this is the ill story. Like me and Power go way back, because he's from the Lower East Side.
Mm-hmm.
So I known Power even before, like, before Lyricist Lounge.
Mm-hmm.
And the crazy thing is, me and Power, we had a we had a public access TV show called
Right.
My Life, where
Yeah.
we used to do like I had a VHS camera, and I used to just come up with different ideas of like doing like sketches, and I would have my boys like improv,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll be like in my crib, and we'll just be bugging out, and then my brother, he would edit it like with two VHS things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Two VHSs. So like, and then we would put it on public access TV, and it was called My Life, and it was, we put that together. I still have footage of that too. And so Power was always a character. He was always mad funny. He was just like, a natural comedian, you know, great personality and like funny. So that is like the other part of the Lyricist Lounge TV show, like how it was inspired by that as well. So that's why I had to make sure that he was a part of it, because, he was there from day one. You know what I mean?
Right. That's dope. That's dope. Yeah, I want to go back real quick to the making of the mix, the mix CDs that you guys put out, the volume.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, how was that, man? Like when you guys had the artists, were you guys all in the studio together? Like, can you talk a little bit about the process? as far as making it?
Yeah. Well, as far as the mixtapes with Echo Unlimited, the Underground Airplay, like what we would do is we would get in tons and tons of demos. You know what I mean? So like we would just go through all the demos that we had and we would pick out the best joints that we would get and we like, yeah, all right, we're gonna put this on, this on, this on. But then we would do like we would always have a cipher skit in each mixtape. So like the first cipher skit was produced by Rashad Smith. So Rashad Smith, if people don't know, he's done a lot of dope
So,
like music for Mary J. Blige, Busta Rhymes, and Erica Badu. Just look him up.
mm-hmm.
So he did the first. He produced the first one, and we had just a bunch of underground MCs on that. Of course, Cellar Dwellers was on it because we were managing them at the time, and then and that's how we would do it. And then like as we continue on, then we would go to like studios and we'll put on like we'll do certain songs from scratch and then we'll put it on the mixtapes. So that's how that was done. But when we like recorded the album, we kind of did the same thing. Like we would get certain, like it was a mixture of us actually doing songs from scratch in the studio. We would like come up with concepts. For an example, like with Lord Have Mercy and DV Alias Christ, we were like, yo, I was like, I think that would be a dope idea to get them together because they both had like the deep voices.
Right.
And, I actually wanted to do something with them two and like Method Man or Rock and, just call it like the gods must be crazy. You know what I'm saying? And like do some ill shit like that. But, I got them two and it came out dope, like, and like all these different concepts we wanted to like merge different artists together, like the Body Rock song with Mos Def and Q-Tip and Tash from the Alcoholics,
Right. Right.
like
Yeah.
yes.
Tell me about Oh No, man.
Oh yeah, so Oh No.
That shit is like one of my favorite joints, man. And I'm not gonna lie, I forgot that it was on that album.
Yeah,
Like,
I know
like
a lot of people forget that it was on that album, but like the way that all came about was through Black Sean, this cat that used to A&R for Raucus. We wanted to do a song with Mos Def and Pharoah Monch, and like he had the connect with Nate Dogg, and he was like, "Yo, it would," Then we came up with that whole idea, like, "Hey, it'll be dope to have like a West Coast artist." It's kind of like how we did the Body Rock, how we had the two East Coast heads and one West Coast head. So that was like the next, level of like Body Rock on a whole other level. You know what I mean? And so that's how that all came about. Cause big shout to him too, man. Black Sean, he was the plug for that.
yeah. So when they put that song together though, they like you guys are there doing the creative process? Like how did the beat? Who picked the beat? Like, yo, do
Oh
you
yeah,
understand? Do you
no,
realize that that's one of the illest
yeah,
verses I
yeah,
think
yeah.
of Pharaoh and
Well,
Mos?
that's the ill part about it because we were we was always a part of the creative process, but like with that particular song, um, with that particular album, let me just go back. Lyricist Lounge Volume 2 was the whole concept of that album was totally different from Volume 1. And we got a lot of flack for that because a lot of people were expecting to like get a super underground album like Volume 1. But what we attempted to do was we wanted to give shine to like the producers,
Mhm.
like, and that's what we intentionally did. So for an example, oh no, that's Rockwaller. You
Right.
know what I mean? So like we wanted a beat from Rockwaller, and we got the beat, and then that's how everything came together. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
Because like we were like, yo, we need a beat from him. That's when, like he was hot. He came out with the Red and Meth shit. We were like, yo, hell yeah.
right.
And then like if you listen to the album, there's a lot of dope producers on the album. We have Eric Sermon, we got Jay Dilla,
Hmm.
like with the Royce the 5'9" joint. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like like we got a
High
bunch
tech.
of different people, high tech,
High tech. Yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like a bunch of people. So that was the whole idea for that album. And that's how the Oh No thing came together, you know?
Well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you
Uh
guys
that,
had one of the largest platforms that all the artists were trying to get on. And I talked to Ant Marshall. He said the key to your guys' success was that you kept it real, meaning that people would give you demos and you gave them your honest opinion straight to their face. Any awkward moments? Just take us back to, artists, coming out of prison and, running up on you with their demo.
yeah.
You having to
Oh
give
man.
them your honest
Yeah.
opinion.
We had a lot of that happen for sure. Like yeah, we had our moments because like you said, when we our early years, we always had a lot of cats, you know, from the hood. Like we had cats from, like I said, everywhere, right? And we did have people come up to our office and like try to thug us out and be like, yo, what up? I want to be on your next show, blah blah blah. But we always was like, nah, man, we good. Like, and we will have to be super chill and diplomatic and cool because we ain't street heads, and but we did have our peoples, of course. And and that was the cool thing about it too, because like we branched out, because the original company for our umbrella company was called Collage Projects. So the whole plan, and that's how we originally started. It was Collage Projects. That was the name of the promotion company, and it started as a promotion company. Then it branched out, and we like got had different divisions. Like we had the division that will focus on Lyricist Lounge. Then we had the division that did street promotion for different record labels, and we had a division that did sales for all the clothing lines, from Blue. So like, and then we started like a modeling agency called Diamonds in the Rough, which was ran by Wise Dread. Wise Dread, you know, he was from Queens, you know what I'm saying? Real street cat, but he was a fly dude, pretty boy street dude. So he was like our street element, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
he held it down for us. So yeah, we had to deal with a lot of stuff like that, but for the most part, everybody showed love and respect because they knew we were coming from, the right, we were coming from the heart, you know what I'm saying? And we gave people a shot, and we did keep it real with people, and they just had to take it for what it is. For an example, um, like Talib Kweli, he would come, he was one of the guys that he would come, and he always wanted to perform at a Lyricist Lounge event. And we were doing open mics as well. We had like we were just doing so much at that time. We started an open mic called Cream at the time, and Talib Kweli would come. This was in the Lower East Side, and like he would just get on the mic, and then after every open mic, he'll be like, "Yo, when y'all gonna let me perform at Lyricist Lounge?" And I would tell him, "Yo, you're not ready yet," or some shit like that. And like he would get offended. He was like, but it actually helped him, like he would use that as like just sharpening his skills even more, until finally he came to an open mic, he bodied it, and then I was like, yo, if you want to perform at the next show, like we would love to have you. And then he performed at a show we did at SOB's, um, and this was like we had Q-Tip host the show, and that show we had Talib Kweli, we had this cat Problems from Brooklyn, um, that he used to roll with Black Attack and Fashion. They had a a
Hmm.
little crew, and then and Rod Digger performed that show when she was 8 months pregnant, and that's when she got recognized by Q-Tip, and then Q-Tip was gonna sign her, and then he ended up passing her on to Busta Rhymes.
So, so back to the MTV show. I believe you guys had 2 seasons, 1 year. What eventually happened with that show?
Well, I think it was like really timing of the show. Like again, I believe we were way ahead of our time, and also like what was going on in television. Uh, there was a huge transition of programming. This is when like reality TV first started becoming really popular. So, you had that, you had what was the name of that show that MTV had?
So,
Which one?
One World, I
oh,
forgot.
the real world.
Real
The
world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Real World. That's when they started. That became popular. They had the Tom Green show. They also had Jackass
Hmm.
started to become like that's what it was, the very beginning of Jackass when we had our second season. And it was a regime change as well, because like they had a whole new like regime of executives at and they changed their whole programming. So I think that's what was our, that's what happened with the show. Like they didn't want to give us another season because the budget was really big. We had like a big budget for that show, because we were in Warner Studios and it was all like, union ran, like they were building the sets and all that. It wasn't like it was on location. Um, so they just didn't want to like give us the money when they were giving like little money to like Jackass because they were using like digital cameras, doing these crazy ass stunts, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? So yeah, we got caught up in all of that.
So right after that, what eventually happens to the Lyricist Lounge, and catch us up on where you found yourself throughout the years.
Yeah, so like after that, that was 2000, and in 2000, I believe either 99, 2000, that's when we came out with volume 2. We had the second season of the show, and then we continue to do like national tours. So, we did a national tour with Mos Def, and he was the headliner of the national tour in 2000. And Talib Kweli was in some of those dates. That's when they started like doing the Black Star thing. um and uh and then like 2001 we did another national tour. um I forgot who was the headliner for that, but then in 2002 we did a tour with Scarface and Eric Sermon as the headliners. So we just continued doing shows. Like we were doing shows at BB King's and different venues throughout New York, and doing and just setting up these national tours. We were actually we ended our deal with Ruckus because at that time they just were like they were just like doing too much. You know what I mean? Like they just were trying to sign too many people. They were overwhelmed, and they had a lot going on. And we were actually on our way to start our own label, independent label called MIC. It was actually a multimedia company that we started. So we were like building on that. And you know, that you know, lived for a little while, but then the partners we were with, it didn't work out with them. So for a minute, like after 2003, that was our last tour, um, national tour that we did, and we actually did three national tours in 2003. We the whole plan was to do a tour every month, but we weren't able to solidify sponsorship for that. So, you know, we were coming out of our pocket, and that just didn't work out. I mean, you know, it was dope shows, and we have great content and footage. Like for an example, the first tour we did was with Boot Camp Click, and we had Pumpkinhead open up for Boot Camp Click. Rest
Mm.
in peace, Pumpkinhead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The second tour we did was with Big Daddy Kane, and we had Killer Priest open up for Big Daddy Kane, and we had Bazaar Royale open up for them as well. So it was Bazaar Royale, Killer Priest, and Big Daddy Kane. And then we did a tour with Dead Prez, Young Bloods from Atlanta, and Killer Mike. So like those were the three tours we did in 2003. After that, we were in a process. We had a deal with this company called Image Entertainment that they were like the leading company that was putting out DVDs, like DVD distribution, and we did a multi DVD deal with them. But this is when we parted our ways with our partners. So we maintain the rights for the Lyricist Lounge documentary, which was supposed to come out on DVD through that deal.
Mm.
And you know, and we also did a documentary about down south called Dirty States of America that came out through that DVD deal. So like we were the first to introduce like a lot of folks on that DVD about, you know, Southern hip hop. You know what I mean? Like so we did a documentary about that. So that came out, and then we put out this other DVD called Best of Hip Hop Videos, where we had all these videos that we got clearance for, um, which was a lot. It was a lot of work. You know, it's not easy to get clearances for this music because you got to go through publishing companies and
Right.
all this shit. So we did that, and then we actually did it creatively. We got DJ Spinbad to mix it, and so like Spinbad is mixing and doing the cuts,
Mm.
and we actually got this young kid to like edit it, and he did a precise job with the cuts and the editing. This was before like video mixing.
Right, right, right.
Like he did the editing going along with Spinbad's mix. And then we also had Boogie Blind on that DVD too. Like we just showcased Boogie Blind on the DVD. So that was a dope DVD. And then we were supposed to come out with the documentary back in 2000 and I think 2003. But we didn't we needed to raise more funds for the documentary, and we never finished it. So, you know, that, you know, from there, fast forward to now, and that's what we actually working on currently. But
So you guys are currently working on the documentary.
yeah, so
Okay.
we have tons and tons of archival footage that we haven't never put out. So, you know, we've been shopping for, you know, the right deal for our documentary. And you know, we also gonna add some other things to the documentary that, you know, I don't really want to mention as of yet. But
That's gonna be
yeah,
crazy.
so like we're talking to some good folks, and we're like working on closing this deal right now. So, you know, we'll announce it really soon.
Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah.
I can't. Well, I'm getting like giddy just thinking about how dope that's gonna be, man. But please
Yeah.
let us know as soon as that's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
in the
for sure.
works. Um, whenever we have a chance to speak to someone that's connected to the gentleman I want to bring up, I like to get their perspective, their point of view on this person. Can you talk a little bit about Voodoo Ray?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, Voodoo Ray, he was my brother. You know what I mean? Like, and is incredible because he was such an amazing person. Like, he was one of a kind. Um, definitely a legend in the game. Um, like nightlife legend, dance legend, you know, and house music, all of that. I mean, he was like, he knew everybody. He was like the mayor of the city and shit. And
Yeah.
he was just such a good dude, man. He was hilarious, multi-talented. Like, me and him, we did so much together. We did so many parties. We started our doing parties back in 1992, which is crazy. I still have flyers, like we did a party called Deja Vu where it was like him and I, and there was this company, a clothing line called Headhunters at the time, and
Okay. Yeah.
so we collaborated and we did parties together. And then he went along and he started dancing for different artists. He danced for so many different artists. Like to name a few, he danced for Foxy Brown, which is the crazy full circle with the whole Foxy Brown story.
Mm-hmm.
And then like he danced for Mariah Carey, he danced for so many people. And he actually was a very successful dancer slash choreographer, and he always like, embraced new dancers. Like he always like wanted to give a place for them to like fully express themselves, and like and have a home for them. So that's why our parties were always super dope, because he knew the importance of having dancers at the party. You know what I mean? He knew that that was the foundation of having good energy at the party, So
Mm-hmm.
like when him and I started doing parties, we did Deja Vu, but then we chill for a minute. I was doing my thing with Lyricist Lounge. He was doing his thing. And then we came back and then we got together again, like around 2006. We started doing parties again, and one of the parties was called Sweet Tooth Tuesdays. And
Okay.
the whole idea of the party was, we had this girl at the time. She was, this super fly chick that she would just make desserts every week, and she'll bring it to the party, and she'll give out the desserts. And that was like one of the perks of coming to the party. And then
Yeah.
we would have different DJs, and we were actually DJing too, him and I. And then we had Talim, this guy DJ Talim, and we would have guest DJs. And Tony Touch was one of the regular guest DJs that we would have. And we were actually doing that party with Sway, from Sway in the Morning Show,
Mm-hmm.
and Rich Nice, like so Rich Nice, he used to be down with the Track Masters and all of that. Um, so it was just a good collaboration and combination, because we all had our own people coming to the party. It was super fly. They had good food there. It was at the spot called the Manor Hatter.
Mm-hmm.
That ended up closing down.
It's
And then
crazy.
we started doing shows at the spot called Libation, where we had Ralph McDaniels doing video mixing, because the space had all these, flat screen TVs on the wall. So we'll show, like, it was like the perfect place to do it. So we did that. And then, in 2008, then that's when, you know, um, Tony Touch started DJing at Toka, I mean, at Sutra.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and he called us to be a part of it, you know, to be like to partner up with him to do Talk Out Tuesdays. So that's how Talk Out Tuesdays all came to play. But Voodoo Ray, like he was very instrumental with the parties. He was already a legend when I before I met him, because like going back to the dance scene and what I was talking about in the beginning of the interview, like he was one of those guys that we looked up to when we were young, you know, because
Okay.
he was older than us. So like he was already the man, you know, because he was like a fly dude. He had mad, he was real charismatic. He always had the girls, you know what I mean?
Right,
And
right.
funny as hell. He was like a natural comedian. So like, you know, we always looked up to him, and he was doing doors for like, you know, Jessica Rosenblum, like at the Tunnel and Mecca and all of that. And so yeah, man, like he was definitely that dude, man, and I miss him every day. You know, great dude, man. Word, and he was known worldwide. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for
yeah,
sure.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
it's
yeah,
funny.
sharing that with us.
E Boogie from IBM Dances said the
yeah.
same thing you just said as far as how he felt it was important to, you know, for the dancers and letting all the dancers come into like the parties, and he
Mm-hmm.
said the same exact thing. And shout out to DJ Talim also. We had him on
Absolutely.
a little while back.
Oh, that's what's
You know,
up.
at
Yeah.
the SOS dances. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
SOS dances. Yup.
Yeah, yeah. So,
There we go. Well, Danny, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing your story.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you everything for you've done for the culture. Before we get out of here, outside of the Lyricist Lounge, what does Danny Castro have coming up in the future?
Well, as far as myself, you know, like I'm working on a few different projects. You know, like uh, building with my wife. She's a DJ. She goes by DJ Blessed. Like we have a few different things. Like we do a lot of things like internationally. We've been like going back and forth to Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and Tulum, doing events out there, setting up like basically branching out and working on setting up like Lyricist Lounge chapters internationally.
Mm,
So I also like been doing a lot of like booking artists internationally, like in South Africa and you know in different parts. So I've been working with folks like Back to the City Festival every year, and I've been doing that for the past several years. So I'm gonna continue doing that, but also getting more into like you know behind the scenes type of things. You know, like working on more creating content. You know, like building on creating content. So you guys will see soon.
okay. So,
Yeah,
last question for you, man. You
hmm
seem like a very humble person.
yeah,
Um, do you sit back and say to yourself, like, or think about how much you guys have contributed to hip hop? And I'm asking that in the fashion of, you know, we're just celebrating like 50 years of hip hop and all of this celebration going on. Um, do you sit back and say, like, man, how much we've contributed and have given the culture? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Does it set into you yet or no?
I mean, you know, like I definitely recognize like what we have brought to the culture and everything. I do feel that it's still a lot more to do. You know,
Right,
like I
right.
want to continue on and figuring out different ways to continue to contribute and you know continue to create platforms for new artists, especially now more than ever because you know like as you know this culture and music has evolved is to me is so important right now, you know what I
Mhm.
mean, because like mainstream they really doing whatever they doing to try to like kill this culture. So it's people like us that are very important to like continue to like create you know platforms for these artists, like these up and coming artists, these new artists that people don't know about, you know,
Right.
because there's a lot of dope artists out there. It's just you got to find them and you know we have to figure out a new way to like make this international platform for these new artists. So that's what it's all about. But yeah, you know, like I do it, and yeah, I am humble. You know, I'm real humble. I'm just like, yo, you know what? It's all love. I rather just receive, you know, receive the flowers and all of that. Like, I don't like tooting my own horn. You know, like I know
Right,
what
right,
I've
right.
done. I know what we done, and I know what we done was very special. You know what I mean? And it was done organically. It was done out of the love of our culture, because we grew up in this. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So like, that's what it was all about.
So, man. Well, listen, on behalf of Sincere and myself, man, changing to the hip hop guys, we appreciate everything you and Aunt Marshall and everybody else that has contributed some way or some form to the success of the Lyricist Lounge and all the project that you guys have done. We
Hmm.
appreciate it, man. And I just want to be able to say to you, not in person, but you know what I mean. Thank you, because
Uh,
you've given us so much to enjoy throughout the years. We can't, it's hard to repay that. Because,
uh,
like I said, oh no, and I keep bringing that up.
yeah,
Like, I can't tell you how many times I've played that over. Like, to this day, and I'm just using that one as one example of,
yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I would literally put that on sometimes just to get me in a good mood. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So it's thank you to you guys. So
Yeah,
just yeah, man, we appreciate it, and much success with everything you have coming in the future. Again, shout out to Aunt Marshall,
yeah.
wherever he's at, and all his. I know he has a lot of projects that he's doing of his
Hmm.
own. Um, so yeah, man, just thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
man. Thank you for having me, y'all, man. Appreciate it
No
for real.
doubt, no doubt.